He's gonna make it clear. Did you know? Come on, listen here. Did you know?
Welcome to the Did You Know Show. Today's installment, we are featuring the Philadelphia Lawyers for Social Equity, and I'm here with my good friend, mentor, legendary broadcaster and journalist, Renee Chenault Fattah. She is the new executive director for this organization, the Philadelphia Lawyers for Social Equity. And we're down here in her office, and we're going to have a great conversation. Welcome to my show.
It's so good to be with you. Just to be in person.
Yes.
I mean, after this year and a half of, we were talking about this, like the isolation and the social distancing and everything being done by Zoom. To have you, I gotta touch. I mean, we're both vaccinated.
Right.
I'm old, so I've had my booster shot even.
Mature.
So, yeah, you're sweet. But yeah, so good to be with you.
And you know, before we get started talking about the Philadelphia Lawyers for Social Equity, I would like to just dial it back a little bit because the organization that we support both wholeheartedly is the Alzheimer's Association, which now I sit on the board, by the way.
Really?
I'm a new board member, right? And we're gearing up for the walk later on this year. And anyway, I know that you did this real good piece that I got behind.
Yes, you did. Yes, you did.
And I had a chance to see the screening, and I know it's my understanding that you're going to be screening. So let's talk about that for a little bit first, if you don't mind. Tell us about it.
No, absolutely. And I can't tell you how much it meant to me to have you as a sponsor. When NBC 10 aired that documentary, in fact, they aired it and then they rebroadcast it and they rebroadcast it a third time, but to see Always Best Care as an advertiser meant the world to me. No, I'm not supposed to touch a mic. I'm removed from TV now, so I've forgotten all the rules about that. But yeah, we actually, believe it or not, it's been 2 years. Wow. It was October 17th, in fact. 2019, where we had the premiere at the Kimmel Center, and I'm so grateful to Ann Ewers, who, the CEO of the Kimmel Center, and Leslie Patterson Tyler, who was, behind it in terms of communications. But that was the opening screening for the documentary. In Our Right Mind: Alzheimer's and Other Dementias Impact in Communities of Color. I wanted to, after having been at NBC 10 for 25 years and in other TV, markets 5 years before that, the opportunity to tell a story the way I wanted to tell it about, and to be able to spend an hour on it as opposed to a minute and 15 seconds, and then to be able to tell a story that wasn't being told and that impacted our community. I mean, when I heard, and I should have known this because, our dear friend Orion Reed, 20 years before I did the documentary, she was testifying before Congress talking about Alzheimer's was disproportionately impacting communities of color. This was in 1998 that Orion was talking about this. But to see the research and then to be of an age where I was starting to see people who I was close to being affected by this disease and finding out that we were twice as likely as African Americans to be impacted by Alzheimer's, that let me know that this was a story that if I was surprised about this, others would be surprised about it. So, I traveled the country, did interviews in Atlanta and Baltimore and Portland, Oregon, telling the stories of people who have Alzheimer's or other dementias, as well as their caregivers. And, the first screening was here in Philadelphia, and then, it aired on television here in the city, and then it was in Baltimore, and then we did this huge screening at Cascade Methodist Church in Atlanta, which is one of the big mega churches. This was like the week before COVID shut everything down. So this was February 26th, 2020. And, after that, no more in-person screenings. So I was able to sort of pivot, and Drexel University and the University of Pennsylvania, they then did virtual screenings. And that's kind of what we've been doing since. So I shouldn't tell the date because I'm not sure when you're going to air, but in late October, Washington University in St. Louis is doing a screening of the film, and then there's a panel discussion. And then in November, Westchester, New York, their Department of Aging and the Alzheimer's Association and the Links, the local chapter there, as well as Links Incorporated, are sponsoring a screening and panel discussion. But the idea is to tell this story and to open the door for a conversation on how this is impacting us, what we can do about it, and what the resources are.
You know, what I found interesting about the documentary, as I participate with a lot of the caregiver support groups here and there between the tri-state area, it's always interesting to watch people's face kind of, you can see that aha moment, you know, especially for the folks that felt like they were isolated and really did not have the resources, and or in some ways felt sometimes resentment because they, you know, it's a disease, and once you're in the mix of it, it can be very consuming to anybody that's in their purview's work-life balance. You did a yeoman's job of really bringing to light, and I think with the approach that was very different than probably we've seen a lot of the other documentaries with Alzheimer's, is that it was from the eyes of the family and the caregivers too, which was very impactful.
Thank you.
And so now, you know, we pivot, you know, we pivot into what you're doing in this season, the Philadelphia Lawyers for Social Equity. What does that mean?
Yeah, right. Well, I'm the new executive director, so I'm still learning what that means. No, you know, because people will say to me, it's like, okay, you were in TV for 30 years. How are you now with Philadelphia Lawyers for Social Equity? And I guess what I would say is that, you know, even though I started my life, my professional life as a lawyer, I'm trained as an attorney, went to the University of Pennsylvania Law School, three blocks away, which is a little eerie to now 40 years later.
Walking down memory lane.
Right, exactly. It's like, wait a sec. But, you know, trained as a lawyer, went to work on Wall Street, member of the New York Bar, but left that to then spend 30 years in journalism, in broadcast journalism, because I believed in the power of storytelling. And believe it or not, I am here because of storytelling. This story needs to be told. And I guess the story that I'm talking about is that there are so many people out there, our friends, our neighbors, our coworkers, who have criminal records. 1 in 3 people has a criminal record. And the fact that somebody could have done something 5, 10, 15 years ago, you know, served their time, paid their debt to society, never had any more problems with the law, and yet still being held back by this criminal record from a job opportunity. You know, the barriers to hiring people with a criminal record, but holding people back from employment opportunities, for educational opportunities. When I learned that somebody who has a marijuana conviction can be kept from getting a federal student loan, the only way I was able to become a lawyer was a federal student loan. The only way my daughter is able to go to vet school is with a federal student loan. How are we blocking people from these opportunities? The simple opportunity of being able to get on a school bus and chaperone your child, you can't do that if you have a criminal record. So all of these barriers. So my job here, yes, executive director. So I got to figure out how to balance a budget. And, you know, my coworker, you know, smelled a mouse in the wall, and I got to figure out how to address that. And I got to make sure invoices are carried, because all of those sort of administrative, you know, responsibilities come with this job. But what I really am here to do is to, one, talk to people who have criminal records to say, hey, there's something that can be done about this. And there's actually something that can be done about it in the law. The same law that puts you in a bad situation, gave a box. There is something in the law, whether it's through expungement, and expungement is, that's a court proceeding which allows you to get something off your record that's not a conviction. So if you're just arrested, or if it's null, it wasn't prosecuted, you can get an expungement. And there are a few exceptions, but that's basically it. But for those things that can't be removed from your record with an expungement, you need a pardon. In other words, a conviction, if you pled guilty. And there's a process in the law that allows you to get that. It's not easy, because, you know, the law is always trying to, make things more complicated than it has to be. But we're here to walk people through that process, to empower people to really make the law do what it's supposed to do, which is, if you've served your time, you haven't had any more problems, this is something the governor can give you if you follow the procedure. And most of us don't know about the process.
You know, the Did You Know show was birthed from the idea or concept and it's deeply centered around connecting people to home, community, and business resources that you ordinarily wouldn't know about. And I'm willing to bet, just as sure as we're sitting here, a lot of people don't even know about the Philadelphia Lawyers for Social Equity. We've learned about different organizations over time in my I guess, season with Always Best Care, because so many caregivers are presented to us for hire that we can't hire because we have to follow the criminal background checks for the state statutes. But, you know, it creates a problem because, as you said, there's so many people with nonviolent offenses that really can't do the simplest tasks, and some of those tasks are caregivers, which puts us, like most workforces, there's a workforce shortage, and then on top of that, you have to deal with the background check, which I believe in the background check because you should know people's background, right? Especially when, for my season, you know, is older adults protection, right?
Yeah,
so you don't want to send somebody into somebody's home that would put them at harm's risk. But you know, right now, today, we just did for our census, for our caregiver census, would you believe that 77% of our caregivers in this day and time are in some way connected to either being a family, a friend, a church member, a neighbor that has decided to work under the state waiver program to provide care to somebody that needs it. What's deep in my mind is that, you know, a lot of these people that run into these problems, oftentimes young people, because, you know, we as an organization, we manage probably about 5 generations of folk, probably from about 18 to 80 something.
Sure.
And the biggest part of that population are what we call millennials. And I'm not negative to millennials. If you're watching out there, I'm not coming for your neck. But the biggest part of that are people that are probably, let's say, 22 to about 37. And a lot of these people, by the time they get to us, have some type of minor infraction. Some would argue, some people would argue that it's probably because of poverty or just bad choices. But then, you know, unfortunately, everybody, in my opinion, deserves a second and sometimes a third chance.
Absolutely.
Especially as you just completely laid out, if you haven't had any infractions for a period of time, why shouldn't you be given a chance? Is there a referral to the Philadelphia Lawyers for Social Equity? Do people look you up online? Like, how do lawyers know about it? Is it something legally in the city that you look through cases, or are you offered as a resource? Are you posted down in the courthouse with a flyer? Like, if you have problems?
All of the above.
Okay.
But it's such a big problem that our challenge is getting the word out. And again, that's why I felt it was important for me to take on this role. You know, I mean, having come into people's houses for 25 years, giving the news at, 4, 6, 11, to sort of walk away from that and not use that for good, I think would be a shame. So, if somebody who is in their 20s didn't watch me, chances are their parents did, So I'm trying to use my voice to, in as many different venues as possible, say, hey, Philadelphia Lawyers for Social Equity are here. You can call us on the phone. And I'm going to give you all the information you can put, later.
You can
go
because of
online.
Technology, we can just air it at the bottom of the screen.
There you go. I love it. I love it. Call us on the phone. Go online. We have made it so easy that you can go to our website and you can do the intake yourself. Now, I mean, there are eligibility requirements because our services are free.
Right.
But if you meet the eligibility requirements, we can walk you through this process. And we do something else. And this is the other reason why I wanted to use my voice. We put you with a pardon coach. This is somebody who works with you on the application. You don't need to have a lawyer to do this, but like most forms, it can be complicated. And one of the most important parts of the form, this form, it says optional statement. Turns out that optional statement is the most important part of the form because it's asking you to tell your story. How have you changed from when you had this conviction? How is this conviction holding you back? So we help people, our pardon coaches, help you sort of craft your story, tell your story, which again feeds into what I believe is so key. I mean, the only way we're going to, I think, make progress is if we hear people's stories and we have empathy from hearing people's stories. To say the narrative is important is an understatement. So anyway, so we provide all those services. So, we're here. We pair you with what we call a pardon coach. And again, whether it's a pro bono attorney, So I'm reaching out to law firms in the city, asking them to, give us your attorneys who, are looking for pro bono,
wow.
work. They get CLE credits for it. We're reaching out to churches. We're reaching out to service organizations like the Links and, the Divine Nine.
Hey.
I'd
And you got our color on today.
I was going to say I'd squeak, but I'm not AKA, so I can't do that. They come get me. But anyway, I'm trying to get as many people to the table as possible on this. We're reaching out to the healthcare industry because, believe it or not, criminal record. I mean, when you talk about social determinants of health, and those are the things that make you more healthy or less healthy, well, a criminal record definitely impacts your health. So we're reaching out to health organizations, getting them to donate their time. So again, it's trying to reach out to as many different parties and interests to get them to join us on this, because it's, why are we holding people back?
Sitting here talking with the legendary.
Oh, stop.
The legendary.
You're so...
My mentor, my friend, Renee,
you.
Fattah. We're going to take a quick break. We're going to come back on the other side, continue our conversation. I'm going to meet some of your some team members, Andrea Lindsay and then Robin Wynn. We're going to come back and talk about what they're doing down in the courthouse between lead investigator and then lead paralegal. We're going to continue to get back to I want to know what CLEs are. I think I know what it is, but I want you to explain when we come back. Stay tuned. Don't go away.
Always Best Care specializes in helping seniors who wish to remain in their home but need assistance. Our flexible care programs vary from hourly to live-in. Simply put, we're there when you need us. And Always Best Care is an approved Community Health Choices provider. Call today and we'll meet with you to develop a personalized care plan. Always Best Care Senior Services, doing more, caring more, and dedicated to exceeding your expectations. Always.
Always Best Care is a great place to work. Flexibility,
leadership, purpose,
great benefits.
There's never a dull moment.
Diversity, inclusion, compasión.
We love our jobs. If you're looking for a great place to work, you can join our compassionate Team Green. You can apply online at teamgreenabc.com or call 267-909-9248.
Teamwork makes the dream work.
Did you know?
Welcome back to the Did You Know Show. I'm sitting here with the legendary Renee Chenault Fattah, and we're down in her office for the Philadelphia Lawyers for Social Equity. And when we left, you mentioned something about lawyers doing an outreach to lawyers to support the efforts of the Lawyers Association. And anyway, you mentioned CLE credits. What does that mean?
Sure. Lawyers have a responsibility to continue their education.
Okay.
I graduated in 1982, so you can imagine the law has changed a lot, and the law is constantly changing. So lawyers have a responsibility, one, to continue learning about changes in the law. So you get credit, CLE, continuing legal education credits, for doing stuff like, participating and volunteering their time for organizations like ours. You also get you are expected to provide pro bono services as a lawyer. Pro bono really meaning for the people, so free services.
Right.
So again, this is a way to meet that requirement in the law by giving of their time, being a pardon coach, or by we provide trainings for how to be a pardon coach, and credits, CLE credits are given for that. So again, it's a way to get lawyers to give of their time for this. And it's a way to help people. And, as a lawyer, as an attorney, that's what you are doing this for. That's why, if you talk to most lawyers, and I know lawyers sometimes get a bad rap, but you really do go into this profession because you want to make a difference. You want to help people. You believe in justice. Whether it's being executed properly, whether it's living up to the expectations we have for it, is a different issue. But, we do go into this profession because we want to serve, and this is a way.
I got a question because I am a lobbyist. I lobby on the behalf of the Pennsylvania Home Care Association and also now for the Alzheimer's Association. We've introduced a few bills. Obviously, for me, it's a bite out of two apples, if you would. One, the Alzheimer's Association as a resource for people may or may not use Always Best Care or another home care association, but a lot of times they want to know about the caregiver support. And a lot of times there are laws out there that people don't know about or statutes that people don't know about. And you made a good point. The law is always evolving and changing as we see now in present day. But does your team at any level do any lobbying for any particular bills?
We don't lobby, but we certainly advocate for change.
Okay.
In an ideal world, there would be a law that if you served your time and a certain amount of time had passed and you hadn't had any more problems, with the law, your record should be automatically expunged. We would like to see a law like that. And there are states that have and are moving towards laws like that. The law does need to change. There's no reason that somebody should have to go through this process. And I talked about it being 3 years. Sometimes it's 3 to 5 years. And even once a person gets a pardon, then under the law, they still have to go back to the court to get the expungement for the. So, it shouldn't be like that, So, yeah, we very much, push for change and advocate for change, but we don't lobby.
Yeah, but that's okay because it's a resource just the same for a lot of people that are watching this program. We air in the tri-state area between Penn City, Delaware, and New Jersey, and I'm just thinking of all the people that come across our desks that want to work but are prohibited. They have a prohibited offense. Yeah. And then sometimes we send them, we have been in the past, we've had some success with sending them down to community legal services. Shout out to Janet Ginsburg. I'm sure they
do great work.
They are really wonderful.
Do.
And it was because of them, Janet was a part of a landmark case, Peek versus the Commonwealth, where, they basically had some issues with, just paraphrasing because I'm not a lawyer by trade, but the statute of limitations for offenses. And a lot of states, because one, out of need, before the pandemic, there was already a national caregiver shortage.
Yes.
Okay, and most people use companies like mine on average from 4 to 6 hours a day, probably 3 to 4 times a week if they're paying it privately. Very few people can pay privately 7 days a week, 24/7. It's just not something that people do. And you really exhaust the resources of extended family and village. But, when you're trying to get people out there that are willing to take on the job of caregiver, it presents all kinds of hurdles to try to get them in with the prohibited offense. So we find ourselves, the state, for instance, Pennsylvania lists out prohibited offenses, 2 misdemeanors equal a felony and so forth and so on. And you got to have this cryptic kind of algorithm to really say, okay, in 2 more years you can work.
How crazy is that?
That is ridiculous.
Meanwhile, we've been through COVID. We see who was on the first lines. We see the need for essential workers and caregivers. Why are we having these barriers and obstacles put up? Something's got to change, and you have to have hope that we can make a change. Each of us doing you lobbying, you doing all the great work you do, me trying to lend my voice. The people you're getting ready to talk to, Andrea Lindsay, who's in our office, and Robin Wynn, and our staff attorneys, Taylor Pacheco and Sarah Coyle. Everybody trying to make a difference, trying to change, as opposed to just accepting what's
going on. And it's my absolute pleasure to be able to give voice to an organization like Philadelphia Lawyers for Social Equity, because as a person of color, you do see the disparities that we also, face. But not just for people of color, just sometimes people you don't know what you don't know.
Yes.
And when you're presented, and what I have seen, a lot of people are presented the option to take the guilty plea to get a C or D, a felony, but something on your record for a very long time. Just like, conversely, when you hear people on lifetime parole or lifetime probation, can we go into that a little bit?
Right.
Can you give us a little?
Andrea Lindsay is going to talk to you about that, because she wrote she helped a woman who wrote an article, and Andrea contributed a lot of the data to it, talking about life without possibility of parole for second-degree murder offenses. And that's an offense where the person didn't shoot, the person didn't kill, but their actions, being involved in the crime, resulted in the person dying. And to sentence a juvenile, to that, you think about, you have a child, I have a child. We think about where just their brain development is as a teenager versus, we know the research tells us that their brain isn't fully developed until
Right.
they're 24 or 25. You're holding a juvenile, a young person, responsible when they should not be held responsible for. I mean, sure, hold them accountable for the rest of their life with no possibility of parole.
Wow.
You know, so Andrea has done some really important research around that, and I know she wants to talk to you about that. And we have to push for change, because you're right, the disparities and how this impacts communities of color. You know, 4 out of 5 people who are on, you know, who have life without possibility of parole are people of color. 70% of that number are black. You know,
Wow.
so the systemic issues, and they cut across lines. So you're talking about Alzheimer's, we're disproportionately impacted. You're talking about the criminal. It's not us, it's the systemic inequalities in place which disproportionately impact us.
Wow. Well, we're going to take a quick break. I'm going to come back on the other side, and I'm going to talk to Andrea Lindsay from your team. She's the lead investigator, and she's wrote a really good article on
Life without possibility of parole. Can you imagine that?
No, I
Which
cannot.
is virtually, they call it a virtual death sentence, because that's what it is. If you don't have the opportunity to get parole, you will spend the rest of your life behind bars.
Wow. Stay tuned. Don't go away. We're going to keep this interesting story
Did
going.
you know?
Always Best Care specializes in helping seniors who wish to remain in their home but need assistance. Our flexible care programs vary from hourly to live-in. Simply put, we're there when you need us. And Always Best Care is an approved Community Health Choices provider. Call today and we'll meet with you to develop a personalized care plan. Always Best Care Senior Services, doing more, caring more, and dedicated to exceeding your expectations. Always.
Always Best Care is a great place to work.
Flexibility.
Leadership. Purpose.
Great benefits.
There's never a dull moment.
Diversity. Inclusion. Compasión. We love our jobs.
If you're looking for a great place to work, you can join our compassionate Team Green. You can apply online at teamgreenabc.com or call 267-909-9248.
Teamwork makes the dream work.
Did you know?
Welcome back to the Did You Know Show. I want to remind everybody that I am on the air, 96.1 FM on WURDradio.com. The radio show airs at 4 p.m. on Saturdays. Check me out. Tune in and listen. We are continuing our conversation at the Philadelphia Lawyers for Social Equity. I continue my conversation with the lead investigator, Andrea Lindsay. Welcome to my show.
Hi, thanks so much for having me.
I am so excited to talk to you. Renee set you up. I first want to know, can you kind of give us an overview of what your role is here?
Sure. So I'm a social worker by training, and I
Okay.
specialize in macro practice, which means I'm able to look at systems. And in this case, the system is life without parole in Pennsylvania for second-degree murder. So at Pulse, I'm able to use data and research to put together different kinds of stories about what's actually happening in Pennsylvania for those convicted of second-degree murder,
Okay.
and opportunities for there to be some kind of recourse and a different kind of justice.
How do you find your leads? I mean, I guess, do they find you? Or both?
Well, as a systems perspective, I was an auditor, so what that means is actually looking at the court records of everybody rather than elevating individual stories.
Okay.
And then it's from looking at the population as a whole that you're able to find characteristics that can help tell those stories. So looking at things like age at the time of the offense, the age today, the number of years incarcerated, and what the research surrounding that population says about who they are and what that means for the rest of us in Pennsylvania.
Wow. And so Renee referenced an article that you were a part of. Can you tell us about it?
Yeah, so there were 2 reports that were released earlier this year that were more of the hard data findings from our audit from those court records. And then as a result of that, I was connected with Nancy Leichter, who is the daughter of a victim in a second-degree murder case. So 40 years ago, her father was a victim of a carjacking, and he had an underlying heart condition. So there were 3 teenagers who were involved in this crime. They did not intend to kill him, but he had a heart attack. So as a result, these these boys, particularly these two brothers, Reed and Wyatt Evans, were convicted of second-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison. So Nancy was a huge advocate for their release through the clemency process in Pennsylvania, but Nancy also realized that this was a much bigger problem, that her family was caught up in it so tragically, but this was something that had implications for thousands of families across Pennsylvania. And while it was a tragedy for her family, over time it also became a tragedy for the Evans brothers' family as well.
Wow. So you guys, your article was featured where?
It was published in the Enquirer Opinion in the Thursday, October 28th piece.
Okay.
So it's written by Nancy, and what I did was really just support Nancy in telling her story, but being able to connect it to what are these system factors in this population. So looking at racial disparities, looking at people's age today, and making these connections for readers that this is bigger than just Nancy's individual story.
Wow. And so your title is a lead investigator, but you walk between a couple of paths. You're a social worker by trade. You mentioned audit, and then you have some legal ramifications. So you're really following everything. But for the viewers that are watching, let's not assume they understand what clemency means. Can you give a definition to that?
Yeah. So clemency is a blanket term that means a forgiveness. So
Okay.
Clemency in Pennsylvania can be a pardon. That's a full forgiveness. It wipes everything away. It says it did not happen. You no longer need to check the box. And then the form that's used most often for life without parole is commutation. So that just means it shortens the sentence. In the case of life without parole, it often means that somebody is shortened from life in prison to release with lifetime on parole.
So Renee mentioned that the whole process of trying to get a pardon might take from 3 to 5 years. Mm-hmm. But with clemency, who makes those decisions? Who approves it? Is it a board? Is it an individual? Is it a governor? Is it like who?
The authority is still vested with the governor, but it's the same process as a pardon, where first things need to go through the Pennsylvania Board of Pardons. So
Okay.
that's 2 elected officials. It's the Attorney General and the Lieutenant Governor, and then 3 other board members who are appointed. But the one difference that's really important here is that for people serving life sentences, they need to get the unanimous recommendation from the Pennsylvania Board of Pardons. For a regular pardon or applicants who don't have a life sentence, they just need a majority. So it's a higher standard for these life sentences.
Now, how often does this Board of Pardons meet? Do they meet monthly, quarterly, semi-annually? Like, how often do they meet as needed? Like, if the court caseload gets presented to them? I mean, what moves them, I guess? Do we know?
They according to their own operating procedures, they can meet whenever they want,
Okay.
but it has been 4 times a year.
4 times a year. Okay, okay. That makes sense. So I'm sitting here with Andrea Lindsay. She's the lead investigator for the Philadelphia Lawyers for Social Equity. How long have you been here? What brought you to this organization, if you don't mind?
I have been here since March 2020. So my first week of work was also the
Shut
week
down,
that
right?
the world changed.
Wow.
So it's been incredible to be here, and I was actually brought on to do this audit. That this was something that we got funding through the Heinz Endowments to do this particular task, which was commissioned by the Lieutenant Governor, John Fetterman.
Okay.
And then over time, the work has kind of evolved, and there have been different ways that this work has been relevant. So, for example, one of the things that we're starting to look at is compassionate release, which is the only other way that people with these life sentences can currently come home, but it's a very, very narrow statute, and it's for people who are terminally ill and being released to hospice, just so that they don't spend their last days in prison.
Wow. That's interesting. And so what would you tell people that are watching, what should they be prepared to do? Because Renee mentioned that there's the intake form is online, but the biggest piece of the intake form, which is optional, is you narrating, the person, the offender, narrating your story. Mm-hmm. But what can people be prepared? Like, I know people that have family members that are probably watching, mothers, daughters, sons, aunts, the village is watching. Mm-hmm. What should people be prepared to present to you to help them move the needle?
I think that when it comes to clemency, one of the biggest things that the board is looking for is change.
Okay.
So I think that the idea of the process is to be able to say that while you made a mistake in the past, here is all of the evidence to support that you have become a different person and you are in a totally different place. So I think that can look a lot of different ways for people. So sometimes people are involved as volunteers in their community, whether that community is behind the walls of a prison or out here with the rest of us. So there's different kinds of support that you can document in different ways, but being able to tell your narrative as a person who is taking accountability, but then also acknowledging, well, here is how I am still making the most of my situation today, and here's how I can be living my best life, which clemency would support.
Well, thank you so much for coming on the show and giving us so much information.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
I really appreciate it. We're going to take a quick break. We're going to come back on the other side. We're going to talk to Robin Wynn, who's the lead paralegal. Thank you so much, Andrea. I
Yeah.
really appreciate you.
Thank you again.
Did you know?
Always Best Care specializes in helping seniors who wish to remain in their home but need assistance. Our flexible care programs vary from hourly to live-in. Simply put, we're there when you need us. And Always Best Care is an approved Community Health Choices provider. Call today and we'll meet with you to develop a personalized care plan. Always Best Care Senior Services, doing more, caring more, and dedicated to exceeding your expectations. Always.
Always Best Care is a great place to work.
Flexibility.
Leadership. Purpose.
Great benefits.
There's never a dull moment.
Diversity. Inclusion. Compasión. We love our jobs.
If you're looking for a great place to work, you can join our Compassionate Team Green. You can apply online at teamgreenabc.com or call 267-909-9248.
Teamwork makes the dream work.
Did you know?
Welcome back to the Did You Know Show. We are continuing our conversation with the leadership team at the Philadelphia Lawyers for Social Equity, and it's my pleasure to introduce Robin Wynn, who is the senior paralegal at the organization. Robin, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Could you explain what it is, what your role is? What do you do?
Okay, so I was originally hired with a very long title, the Criminal Records Expungement Program Paralegal. I was the first paralegal that Pulse ever had, and I thought, all right, like, cool. And so what I really did was help draft and file expungement petitions. That was pretty much everything I did. And occasionally I would go out to the different clinics that we held in person, and we're getting back to now, and help get people registered into our program.
Is there kind of I know I'm putting you on the spot a little bit, but is there kind of a checklist when I think about expungement? When somebody files for an expungement, what are some of the things that they should be prepared to give you or show you? Like when you go down your checklist, what are you collecting and organizing?
So back then it was a lot of paperwork, and we moved into a digital thing now. So it's basically the same information. We need all of their information. We need their social security number. We need date of birth. We need their address and phone numbers. We get an additional contact person in case we lose contact with them, someone who would be able to reach them. And we need their income because we do serve low-income individuals. So we, we use the federal poverty guidelines, 200% of the federal poverty guideline. And, we help everyone that we can at no cost.
So when you go out, obviously before the pandemic, you probably went out and you led these, I imagine, these question and answer kind of sessions. What are some of the frequently asked questions that you get?
I feel like one of the most frequently asked questions is about the difference between the felonies or misdemeanors, because a lot of people are like, well, I've just got misdemeanors. Can I get it expunged? But expungement isn't about that. It's about whether there was a conviction or not. So the most easily expungible things on a person's record are non-convictions. Some convictions can be expunged, like summary convictions, which are like sort of ticket things, disorderly conduct, stuff.
What about retail theft or a B&E, breaking and entering, like I my Law and Order?
Well, if you weren't found guilty, because that is really what I always found the oddest thing once I got into this, is that when people are arrested, that record stays. They could be found, go to trial, not guilty on everything, and that record is still there. So a potential employer or a landlord could then pull it up and see this, and they might not recognize that the person was not guilty. What they see is they were arrested for all of these things, and people kind of jump to conclusions and like, oh my God, robbery and, you know, terroristic threats and all kinds of things that we don't even really like. What did you mean by that, DA? But, you know, so that stuff was lingering and sitting there, and people also were under the impression that after a certain amount of time it would go away, but it doesn't. Like, it never goes away. You have to actively make it go away. That's like what we do.
It's like a credit report.
Yeah. But even on your credit report, after 7 years, stuff is supposed to drop off.
Supposed to?
But, you know, they exist forever and ever and ever in Pennsylvania.
Wow. So how long have you been with the organization, PLSE, as you call it?
Yes. I've been with them for a little over 2 years. I started April 1st, 2019. I make the joke that, you know, April Fools, and the joke's on them because I'm still here. So I started in a temporary position.
Okay.
It was a little 3-month thing. I had recently graduated from CCP. Hadn't found a job yet. Figured, well, this will be a nice, you know, little thing that I can...
Intermediary situation that turned into permanent.
Yeah. Yep.
Because you can tell when people really like their job because you have such a nice center about you.
Oh, thank you.
And I imagine you probably see where people are trying to get past. So there's some vulnerability there, and people have to, because you're probably one of the last stops of redemption, if you will, in a way. From a criminality standpoint, you're helping people get past maybe a mistake or maybe something that could be misinterpreted as a mistake, but they have to feel comfortable talking to you.
Yeah.
And really, you know, this is not the person. Robin and team are not the people you want to shuck and jive. You want to. I'm pretty sure in your intro, you got to say what it is because it's already documented.
Right. People
always have, you know, like my grandfather used to say, you know, there's a 3 sides to the story. There's their side, the side, and the truth. And so you want to stick to the truth, and you want to really, I guess, understand your right. You probably deal with a lot of people that really don't understand their rights.
No, and they feel like they've never gotten a fair chance. A lot of people, when I was hired, it was under Zane Johnson and Rachel Miller, who were just amazing lawyers. And one of the things they taught me, which I carry to this day, is that people need to tell their story. A lot of times they have never had a chance, like they went to court and their the public defender is like, no, I've got it. Let me handle this. And they get a plea deal and they don't even know what happened. Like some people didn't even know that they pled guilty. Like they got a deal, they needed a deal, they couldn't afford, you know, to stay in jail. And this was a way that they could go home right now. Sign this and you can go home. So they do. And then they are carrying this record for a thing that maybe they did, maybe they didn't do. But they've never had a chance, like they never got to say anything in court. And they've never, like no one's listened.
Somebody was just pushing the paper.
Right. So when they call, I listen. And they get heard. And then we, you know, do everything we can to help clear their record.
I guess the approach is tailored to the need. I mean,
Yes.
it's not one size fits all. It's whatever your situation, your scenario, or how long. I guess a lot of variables. But in talking to you, people should be prepared. Have your social security number, have the charge and the charge number, all that kind of thing. No?
No, they don't need any charges. When they give us all the information, when they do all of this online, and they don't have to come to one of our clinics.
Okay.
It's lovely to meet them at the clinic, but they can also just go online to our website, click on expungements, and do the new client intake form. And so they don't even have to come in and, talk to someone. They can just, it puts them into our system. They fill out the information. They get an email back. They respond to that email. That gives us an electronic authorization form. We're able to get their records with that.
Oh.
So we don't need them to get their records.
Okay.
There have been rare occasions, of course, where someone's record, for whatever reason, won't show up, but they're like, something's coming up. And they'll get their records from the state police, and I still don't know why they don't show up, but we can file it from that report as well. So.
Wow. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show and giving us what you do. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Robin Wynn, the senior paralegal. We're sitting down here with Pulse, the Philadelphia Lawyers for Social Equity. They are a jewel in the Nile. We didn't even know, a lot of people, I'm willing to bet, did not even know this organization existed. And you guys, ladies, really do, help people, and that can be helped. And I won't even put you on the spot and ask you the statistic question. I'll say that for Renee to give her the statistical analysis. But thank you for all that you do.
Thank you.
All right, so we're going to take a quick break. We're going to come back. We're going to have Renee Chenault Fattah coming back to kind of end off the show and kind of give us the wherefore out thou. Stay tuned. Do not go away.
Did you know?
Always Best Care is a great place to work.
Flexibility.
Leadership. Purpose.
Great benefits.
There's never a dull moment.
Diversity. Inclusion. Compasión. We love our jobs.
If you're looking for a great place to work, you can join our compassionate Team Green. You can apply online at teamgreenabc.com or call 267-909-9248.
Teamwork makes the dream work.
Always Best Care specializes in helping seniors who wish to remain in their home but need assistance. Our flexible care programs vary from hourly to live-in. Simply put, we're there when you need us. And Always Best Care is an approved Community Health Choices provider. Call today and we'll meet with you to develop a personalized care plan. Always Best Care Senior Services, doing more, caring more, and dedicated to exceeding your expectations. Always.
Did you know?
Welcome back to the Did You Know Show. As we round down this episode, I have again with me the legendary Renee Chenault Fattah.
It's such a mouthful, isn't it? I'm sorry.
And, first of all, let me just say, the team members, Andrew and Robin, are amazing people. Yeah. And you can tell when people really enjoy what they do. It's just really engaging. But as we wind down, I want to get back to one question. Mm-hmm. How did this organization, Philadelphia Lawyers for Social Equity, or Pulse, as I've been educated, how did it start?
Yeah. And you're right. You just met two staff members who are incredible. Our staff attorneys are amazing. Our board of directors are amazing. And the people who founded us are amazing. We were founded a decade ago, so we're actually celebrating our 10th anniversary. We were founded a decade ago by 3 civil rights attorneys. And they had the sense, the smarts to, before starting this organization, they wanted to find out from communities what the issues were. And what they found in canvassing communities in Philadelphia was that criminal records were holding people back. So that started this organization on the road of focusing on expungements. And last month, we filed our 25,000th petition, expungement petition. Yeah. Our goal is to get another 1,000 by the end of the year.
Oh, wow.
But in doing expungements, and we had touched on this earlier, they found that not everything could be removed from a person's criminal record. And that's what led us into doing pardons. So that's okay. Sort of the genesis. That's how we started.
If you don't mind, one of the things that I kind of caught my attention was in conversation with Andrea and Robin, more so Robin, she mentioned a compassionate release. What is that about?
Wow, I can't believe you asked about that, because this morning in our programming committee, we were talking about, as I said, Philadelphia Lawyers for Social Equity, we do pardons and expungements. This morning we started talking about the need to start taking on cases of compassionate release. That's a situation where someone is in prison, they're terminal, they don't have much longer to live. Why not let them go home? And there's, of course, a reentry process where, a hospice situation would be set up for them. But let them, and this is somebody who obviously is no longer a risk. They
Right.
have weeks, months to live. But let them die with dignity at home with their family. And there is an attorney in town who has been doing these sorts of cases. And he's like, I'm getting older, and your organization is focused on justice and representing people who oftentimes don't have a voice. Are these cases you would be interested in? So we are, I'm not sure, because again, what I'm learning in an organization is that it's easy, because there are so many injustices, to sort of go off in a lot of different directions, and you have to sort of stay true to your mission.
Right.
But this seems to be true to our mission, because this is helping people who have, who need our help. And nobody else is responding to their need, and so that's an area that we're looking at. It's got to run it by the board. What I'm also learning is that I may feel a certain way, and Andrea may feel a certain way, and Robin, but you got to get a board approval. But I have had conversations with our board chair, the Honorable Karen Simmons, who of course is a judge in the Municipal Court of Philadelphia, and she believes that this is also an area that we should be looking at. So I do believe that these are cases that we're going to be taking on. I mean, and what kind of society keeps a person in prison in their last weeks and months of life? How cruel.
It's a whole conversation to unpack as you watch some of the major media outlets when they're starting to reconsider the death penalty, capital punishment, even. And then I was just brought to my watching some of the news that some of these capital punishments are botched in a way that it becomes much more painful than it needs to be. I mean, putting somebody to death, I mean, that's a whole conversation. That's another episode.
Absolutely.
But as we round down this episode about Pulse, Philadelphia Lawyers for Social Equity, you can look at the bottom of your screen. You can get the information for their website and their telephone number.
Thank you.
What are some of your other strategic goals? What is on your plate to really accomplish, or even start to do, or continue to do?
I mean, throughout the whole course of our conversation today, I've talked about the importance of getting this story out. But in terms of concrete numbers, I said 25,000, expungement petitions. Well, that's great. But you know what? In terms of pardons, we haven't done a lot because the word hasn't gotten out. And District Attorney Larry Krasner, when this issue came up, he said that last year only 55 petitions for pardon, or application rather, came across his desk. He would like to do 5,000. Well, our goal is to put him to the test on that. By December of 2022, and I say that date because the Board of Pardons, the chair of the Board of Pardons is Lieutenant Governor John Fetterman.
Okay.
He has been a huge supporter of changes in the law and expediting the decision. He's going to be gone, whether he becomes a senator, whether, but there's going to be a change in Harrisburg. We're going to have a new governor, a new lieutenant governor, the secretary of the Board of Pardons, Brandon Flood. He's been very supportive. All those folks are going to change. We don't know who's going to be in place. So between now and then, we know we have a receptive ear. So let's get as many pardon applications as we possibly can in the next 14 months, 15 months. So my goal is to get 1,000 petitions. Or I keep saying petitions because I'm thinking expungement petitions. Applications, 1,000 pardon applications into Harrisburg, which means I need people who are, pardon recipients, clients to reach out. I need people to volunteer their time to help us. Right now we have 130 clients who are waiting for a pardon coach. So all the organizations that have volunteer opportunities, reach out to us, volunteer your time. It takes a couple of hours total.
Wow.
To an hour to learn how to be a pardon coach, and then maybe an hour and a half, 2 hours to help somebody through the process. That's not that's not a big time commitment. And when you talk to somebody who's been a pardon coach and they've done it, they want to do it again. So that's the ask. That's the ask here, the call to action. We want to get 1,000 pardon applications filed by December of next year, and that means people who could benefit from a pardon need to reach out to us, and people who can help their fellow neighbors and friends and churchgoers, volunteer your time. That's
and
what
as
we're
we
looking
round up the
for.
conversation, I'm going to sneak in the conversation one more time. In our right mind, you have been an advocate for folks that are suffering from Alzheimer's, as well as the caregivers and the family. She's going around the country to really, advocate really for those folks. One more time, let's what is your lineup?
Okay. The end of October, we're at Washington University in St. Louis for the screening of In Our Right Mind, Alzheimer's and Other Dementias Impacting Communities of Color. After the film is shown, there's a panel discussion, because that was the idea of this film. Show the film, and then let's talk to doctors and caregivers and organizations like the Alzheimer's Association. So we have that, the end of October, the beginning of November. We are in Westchester, New York, the aging organization, governmental aging in New York, sponsoring the Alzheimer's Association, as well as the Links. And then we're looking to 2022. Links Incorporated, our national convention. There is a festival that accompanies the national convention in Baltimore, and I've been told that they're very interested in having the film as part of the film festival there. But again, the idea just to get us talking about this,
right,
and to get it before as many different people and many different audiences as we possibly can. Because as you know, when you open the door, everybody wants to share their story, and everybody has a story. And in doing that, you get information and you get support.
Closed mouth does not get fed. That's it for me. That's it for this episode. I want to remind the viewers that you can check me out on 96.1 FM on Saturdays at 4 p.m. at WURDradio.com. It's been my absolute pleasure. Thank you.
Right.
Thank you so much. And anything we can do to get the word out, Philadelphia Lawyers for Social Equity, Pulse, just let us know. You have an advocate.
Thank you.
And we'll talk to you later.
Did you know he'll help you understand? Did you know always a right-hand man? Did you know he's gonna make it clear? Did you know? Come on, listen here. Did you know?
Always Best Care is a great place to work.
Flexibility.
Leadership. Purpose.
Great benefits.
There's never a dull moment.
Diversity. Inclusion. Compasión. We love our jobs.
If you're looking for a great place to work, you can join our compassionate Team Green. You can apply online at teamgreenabc.com or call 267-909-9248.
Teamwork makes the dream work.